So when the world told him, he was born to pull rickshaw, he pulled off something far greater. He pulled his entire family, out of poverty by becoming an IAS officer. So here are the full story, here's the full story of Govind Jaiswal, from rickshaw puller's son to IAS officer, right? Here, a childhood born in struggle, in the cramped, bylines of Varanasi, right? Amidst honking, rickshaw, all temples and dusty roads, lived a young boy named Govind Jaiswal. His father was not a businessman. He wasn't a landlord, right? He was a rickshaw puller, right? Okay, earning barely enough each day to feed his children. They lived in a tiny room, in a room house, right? In a tiny room, single room house. No fan, no bed, no comfort. That one room was everything, bedroom, kitchen, study corner, and shelter from the outside world. For most people, that kind of life is a cage. But for Govind, it was like a launch pad, right? So even a child, Govind noticed how society treated poverty like a curse. He saw how dignity disappears when you are poor. And in that pain, fire was born. The day that, totally shattered and ignited him. One day a rich girl from a neighbor arrogantly told him that, people like you can never become officers. You are meant to pull rickshaw like your father. That was like a curse, that was not a bearable point of view. That was totally unbearable, This is not easy to, just bear the pain of it, that when people or any kind of people, who try to claim like this, that people like you can never become officers, you are meant to pull rickshaws like your father. So those words, pierced deeper than any wound, right? But instead of breaking him, they transformed himself, right? So that night, Govind sat in the darkness of his tiny room and promised himself, one day I will become an IAS officer, not to prove her wrong, but to prove myself right. So his father's, unbelievable sacrifice, that Govind's father, Mr. Lal Jaiswal, was not educated, but he understood, one truth: education is the only way out, right? So despite his, failing health, he continued, to pull rickshaws under the blazing sun, enduring pain and exhaustion daily, right? So when Govind showed promise, his father did something unimaginable. He sold their only piece of land, right? So their last source of security, to fund his son education in Delhi. So people called him crazy, but he smiled and said that if my son become an officer, he wouldn't need land. He will own the world, right? So Delhi struggle here, books, hunger, and isolation. Delhi is a city of dreams, but for a boy from the slums of Varanasi, it was also a city of brutal reality. Govind here, enrolled in a coaching institute, but the real battle began after that. He could barely, afford meals. Many days, he survived on dry sattu, right? That we called roasted gram powder, right, mixed in water, right? He walked long distance to save on bus fare, right? He lived in a noisy small rented room with no peace, no AC, right, and no help, right? While others complained about syllabus and coaching fees, Govind was fighting poverty, loneliness and hunger, all at once, right? Still, he never stopped studying, right? Nights without sleep, days without fear. Some nights he couldn't, sleep because of the heat, mosquitoes, or worry about his father's health back home. But those nights were not wasted. He would sit under a dim bulb, sweat pouring down his face and read with, relentless focus. He had no plan B. He wasn't just preparing for UPSC, he was preparing to change his entire life. The UPSC exam here, a silent war on paper. When the exam finally arrived, Govind walked into the hall, with just a pen and, hand, right? And lifetime of pressure on his, on his shoulders, right? So here he, answered every questions like man possessed. He wasn't aiming. He wasn't aiming to beat others. He was like aiming to defeat the destiny he was born into, right? I mean to say, he was aiming to defeat the destiny he was born into, right? So, and then began the hardest part, the wait, the result. A son's victory, a father's freedom. When result came out, the nation was stunned. Govind Jaiswal has cracked UPSC Civil Services examination, and in his first attempt with an All India rank of 48. A rickshaw puller's son had beaten the odds, the elite coaching culture and the system itself, with nothing but raw greed and determination. When his father showed the result, he didn't say a word. He just cried. This time not in pain, but in pride. The deadline that followed, new channels, went wild. So here rickshaw puller's, son becomes IAS officer, from poverty to power, right? From poverty to power. Okay, here the Govind Jaiswal story, but to, Govind, this wasn't about fame, it was about giving his father rest, it was about giving respect back to his family. He said, like, my father will never pull a rickshaw again, right? There is the only success that matters. Where is he now? Today, Govind Jaiswal is a successful IAS officer. He has served various positions of responsibility, working in integrity, humanity, and passion, right? So he continues to inspire, millions across India, not just because of where he is now, but because of where he started. So the final message, to your audience is what here, that to all the peoples, I mean to say, the final message what I'm trying to address, to the whole nation, that don't let your circumstances define your destiny. Even if you are born with nothing, if your will is strong, enough, you can achieve everything. When you fight for your dreams with everything you have got, not even fate can stop you ever. So yeah.